My name is Camille Harper, and I'm 31 years old. 8 weeks ago, at my own baby shower, my mother-in-law stood in front of 60 guests, tapped a champagne glass with a fork, and handed me a cream-colored envelope. Then she said, smiling sweetly, "I've prepared 38 reasons why my son deserves better." People laughed. My husband laughed. I didn't. I opened the envelope. I skipped to number 17, and I read it out loud. By the end of that afternoon, 3 relatives confronted her, 2 walked out, and my husband removed her from our shared accounts before sunset. But before I tell you what was inside that envelope and why she had no idea she had incriminated herself, let me take you back 5 weeks earlier. Because humiliation like that doesn't happen overnight. It builds. It simmers. It plans. It was a Wednesday night in late March. I was 8 months pregnant, swollen ankles elevated on 2 couch cushions, trying to ignore the steady ache in my lower back. Our apartment in Portland smelled faintly of lavender oil and takeout noodles. Evan was in the kitchen, pacing. "With Mom," he mouthed. I didn't need him to say it. I could hear her voice from across the room, sharp, organized, decisive, like she was chairing a corporate meeting instead of planning a baby shower. "I've handled the caterer, and the venue, and the guest list. Camille doesn't need to stress herself." Doesn't need to stress herself. Not ask Camille, tell Camille. Evan walked over and handed me the phone. "She wants to confirm colors." I took it slowly. "Hi, Diane." Her tone shifted instantly. "Camille, darling. Resting, I hope?" "I was thinking," I began carefully, "maybe we could keep it small. Close friends, immediate family." "Oh no, this is my first grandchild. It needs to be done properly." Properly. I had imagined something simple, maybe sage and cream tones. "That would wash you out, sweetheart," she said smoothly. "And let's be honest, pregnancy already changes a woman's shape." The silence stretched. I swallowed. "We've chosen coral and gold, very photogenic. You'll thank me later." I felt something tighten behind my ribs. "Oh, and one more thing," she added casually. "I invited Lydia." My stomach dropped. Lydia was Evan's ex, the one Diane still followed on social media. "That's unexpected," I said evenly. "Oh, please, it's mature. We're adults." She lowered her voice slightly, and she always looked so elegant beside Evan. The implication landed exactly as intended. When the call ended, Evan looked at me. "She's excited." "She invited your ex." He winced. "Mom likes her." I gathered. He hesitated. "Just ignore it, Cam. It's easier." Easier. I'd heard that word before. A week later, we had dinner at Diane's house. Her dining room looked like a magazine spread, glass centerpiece, polished cutlery, candles lit though it was still daylight. I wore a soft green maternity dress I'd bought with my own money. It made me feel like myself. Halfway through dinner, Diane tilted her head at me. "That color is brave." "Excuse me." Green can be unforgiving, especially when one is expanding. Forks paused mid-air. Evan cleared his throat, but said nothing. "I'm comfortable," I replied calmly. "That's what matters," she said sweetly. "Though if your mother were here, she might have guided you differently." She knew my mother had passed away when I was 19. The comment was surgical. Later that night, Evan's sister Marissa followed me into the kitchen. "She's planning something," she whispered. "What do you mean?" I overheard her on the phone. She said she's finally going to prove her point. "I don't know what that means, but you should be careful." My pulse quickened. "Why are you telling me?" Marissa looked tired. "Because she's been doing this my whole life, and no one ever stops her." 2 days later, Marissa asked to meet me for coffee. She works at a regional credit union. She looked nervous. "I wasn't supposed to see this," she said quietly, "but your joint account flagged for internal review." I froze. "What kind of review?" There was a transfer, $9,600. My heart stuttered. From where? Your savings. That's impossible. Marissa's voice dropped further. The authorization came from an older linked access. I didn't need her to finish. Diane. Evan had added her years ago, just in case. The transfer date matched the antique chandelier Diane had recently posted about online. She said she borrowed it. Evan told me that later night after calling her. Borrowed. Without asking. She said she was going to pay it back. And you believe that? I asked quietly. He looked conflicted. It's my mom. And I'm your wife. He rubbed his temples. Just don't bring it up at the shower. I don't want drama. There it was. Don't upset her. Keep the peace. I didn't answer. The night before the shower, Diane called me directly. Her voice was honeyed. I've prepared something special for tomorrow. A surprise. Very personal. My instincts screamed. What kind of surprise? You'll see, she said lightly. I've been compiling it for months. Compiling. That word stayed with me long after the call ended. The next morning, as I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my coral dress, the one I chose, not the one she dictated, I felt it. Not fear, preparation. I slipped a folded bank statement into my purse, just in case. When we arrived at the venue, a rented event loft downtown, 60 guests filled the space. Gold balloons, coral centerpieces, a large banner that read, "Welcome, Baby Harper." It was beautiful, and not one decision had included me. Then I saw Lydia, perfectly styled, wearing sage green, smiling at me like we shared a secret. Diane approached, air-kissed my cheek, and whispered, "I'm so glad you wore coral. It makes this easier." Easier for what? At exactly 2:30 p.m., she tapped her glass. The room quieted. She picked up a cream envelope. "Before we open gifts," she announced brightly, "I prepared something fun, just a little perspective for Camille." My heart began to pound. This was it, and she had no idea what she'd written. Diane held the envelope like it contained something sacred. Her lipstick was flawless, her posture perfect, her smile controlled. "Just something light-hearted," she said, glancing around the room. "A few observations, things Camille can reflect on as she steps into motherhood." A ripple of polite laughter moved through the guests. Evan shifted beside me. "It's probably just jokes," he whispered. But Diane wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. I felt the baby shift inside me, a slow, heavy roll beneath my ribs. She opened the envelope and removed several neatly typed pages. 38 reasons. Typed, numbered, formatted. This wasn't spontaneous. This was premeditated. She cleared her throat. Reason number 1. A wife should prioritize her husband's family traditions. Camille has declined 3 holiday invitations in the past 2 years. There were murmurs. I blinked slowly. I had declined 1 Christmas, the year my pregnancy nausea had landed me in urgent care. Reason number 4. Financial transparency is essential in a marriage. Camille has shown resistance to shared oversight. Oversight. That word made my skin prickle. Reason number 9. Presentation matters. A wife should maintain elegance regardless of circumstance. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Lydia looked down at her drink. Evan leaned closer. "Mom, maybe—" "Oh, it's all constructive," Diane interrupted breezily. "We're family." Family. She continued. Reason number 12. Emotional resilience. Camille tends to be overly sensitive when offered feedback. My ears rang. I could feel heat climbing up my neck. This wasn't humor. This was character assassination. Then she smiled again. Reason number 17. And something in her tone changed. There it was, the one she was proud of. She read, "A husband deserves a partner who contributes equally. Camille's income has fluctuated significantly, placing disproportionate financial pressure on Evan." The room went still. Now I understood. This wasn't about decor. This wasn't about sage dresses. This was about control. I slowly reached into my purse. Diane continued. Reason number 22. Stability. Evan had a stable, structured relationship before. Sometimes compatibility is clearer in hindsight. That one landed like glass. Even Evan flinched. She was comparing me to Lydia, publicly, at my baby shower. I stood up. My chair scraped against the polished floor. "Diane," I said evenly, "may I see that?" She hesitated, just slightly, then handed me the papers. Of course, I believe in open dialogue. Open dialogue. I scanned down the page. The formatting was meticulous. Bullet points, dates, assumptions. Then I saw it. Reason 38. Financial management concerns. Camille questioned a necessary family-related transfer in the amount of $9,600, demonstrating mistrust. A collective inhale swept through the room. She had included it. She had put it in writing. I lifted my eyes slowly. "You mean the $9,600 that was withdrawn from my joint savings account without my consent?" The air shifted. Diane's smile tightened. It was a temporary adjustment. I turned toward the guests. Did everyone know my savings account had temporary adjustments? A cough sounded. Marissa stared directly at her mother. I continued calmly. "That transfer was used to purchase a chandelier, correct?" Diane's face lost a shade of color. "It was for the house." "Your house," I clarified. Evan looked between us. "Mom, is that true?" "It was an investment piece," she snapped quietly, "and I told you I would return it. You told him, not me." Silence. Heavy. Pressurized. I glanced back at the paper. Reason 32. Trust issues. I almost laughed. I questioned an unauthorized withdrawal from my own savings? Yes, that's called financial literacy. A few guests murmured agreement. Diane's composure began to crack. "You're twisting this," she hissed under her breath. "No," I said gently. "I'm clarifying." Then I did something I hadn't planned. I kept reading. Reason 35. Emotional instability during pregnancy. I lowered the page. "You wrote that I was unstable?" She shot back, "You cry easily." "I cry because you undermine me." Gasps. Evan stepped forward. "Mom, stop." But she didn't. She doubled down. "I am trying to protect my son. He had options. He had stability before this chaos." Chaos. I felt something shift inside me, not physically, emotionally. A line had been crossed. "You invited Lydia today," I said evenly. "Was that for stability too?" Diane. At 9:42 p.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. I knew it was her. Evan had blocked Diane after removing her bank access. I hadn't. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, the notification came through. Her voice wasn't composed anymore. It wasn't the polished matriarch tone she used in public. It was sharp, fractured. "You have no idea what you've done," she said. "You humiliated me, in front of my friends, in front of family, after everything I've invested in that shower, after everything I've done for you." A pause. "You've made a mistake, Camille." The message ended. I stared at the ceiling, the baby shifting restlessly inside me as if sensing my elevated pulse. Evan lay beside me, rigid. "She's spiraling," he muttered. "No," I said quietly. "She's escalating." There's a difference. Spiraling is emotional. Escalating is strategic, and Diane was strategic. The next morning, we received an email. Subject line, "Urgent, financial clarification."
It wasn't from Diane. It was from an accountant. Attached was a spreadsheet titled Household Contribution Analysis, Harper Marriage. I felt sick before I opened it. She had itemized everything: Evan's salary, my freelance income, mortgage payments, utilities, groceries, even prenatal medical expenses. A column labeled Disparity Percentage. At the bottom, a highlighted figure: Camille Contribution Deficit 18.7%. Below it, a paragraph: As an invested family member concerned with long-term stability, I believe transparency and corrective action are necessary. Corrective action. She hired an accountant? Evan asked, stunned. Or used one she already knows. There was more. A second attachment. A draft post-nuptial agreement template. My hands began to shake. This is insane. Evan ran a hand through his hair. She thinks she's helping. No, I said firmly. She's trying to regain leverage. He didn't argue, because deep down he knew it was true. 2 days passed in tense silence. Then the hospital called. I was scheduled for a routine non-stress test, monitoring the baby's heart rate and movement, standard for late pregnancy. The nurse sounded confused. Mrs. Harper, are you rescheduling your induction consult? I'm not scheduled for induction. Yes, you are. It was requested yesterday. Ice flooded my veins. Requested by who? A Diane Harper. She listed herself as authorized contact. My mouth went dry. That authorization should have been removed. There was typing on the other end. Oh, it appears she was listed on your intake forms from last year. Last year, before the wedding, before we updated paperwork. She scheduled an induction consult? Evan repeated when I told him. She tried to control when I give birth. The room felt smaller. That afternoon, we drove to the hospital to update every single form. Emergency contact, Evan only. No extended family. Password required for phone updates. The nurse was kind. You'd be surprised how often this happens, she said gently. Family oversteps. This wasn't overstepping. This was intrusion. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the shower. Her smile, her tone, the way she said, options. My chest tightened. Evan noticed. You're not okay. I feel like I'm being audited as a human being, I admitted, like I have to prove I deserve to exist in my own marriage. He was quiet for a long moment. I grew up like that, he said finally. Everything was performance-based. Grades, sports, even emotions. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. She used to compare me to other kids constantly, he continued. I thought it was normal. It's not, I said softly. He looked at me. I know. 3 days later, another blow landed. Our bank flagged a credit inquiry. Someone had attempted to access a line of credit under Evan's name. The listed cosigner? Diane Harper. She can't do that, I said. She tried, Evan replied grimly. The bank denied it because of the recent access revocation, but the intent was clear. She was attempting to create financial entanglement, control through obligation. She's panicking, Evan said. No, I replied again. She's trying to force dependency. There's a difference. The stress began affecting me physically. My blood pressure ticked up. At my next appointment, the doctor frowned slightly at the monitor. Are you under unusual stress? I hesitated. Yes. Then we need to manage that. Elevated stress late in pregnancy isn't ideal. I nodded, throat tight. That evening, I sat alone in the nursery. The walls were soft cream, the crib assembled, tiny folded onesies in the dresser. This was supposed to be peaceful. Instead, it felt like we were bracing for impact. Evan came in quietly and sat beside me on the floor. She sent me a message, he said. What did it say? She wants to meet, says this has gone too far. I let out a hollow laugh. She started it. I know. Do you want to meet her? He looked torn. She's my mother. And I'm your wife. The words weren't accusatory, they were factual. He nodded slowly. You're right. But neither of us knew yet how far she was willing to go. The real turning point came the following Friday. Marissa called. Her voice was shaking. Mom went to the venue manager from the shower. Why? She's asking for footage. My stomach dropped. For what? She's saying she was verbally attacked and needs documentation. I closed my eyes. She wasn't retreating. She was rewriting the narrative, positioning herself as the victim. She's going to spin this, Evan muttered grimly. Yes, I said quietly. And if she does, this won't stay private. Family conflict is one thing. Public reputation warfare is another, and Diane had resources, connections, influence. I felt the baby kick sharply, strong, insistent. A reminder. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about boundaries, about safety, about what kind of environment our child would grow up around. That night, I made a decision, not emotional, strategic. If she wants documentation, I said calmly to Evan, then we document too. He looked at me carefully. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we stop reacting and start preparing. Because if Diane wanted a war of narratives, she had just given us all the evidence we needed.
We chose neutral ground. A private conference room at Evan's law firm. Glass walls, frosted halfway up. Clean table. No family photos, no emotional leverage. If Diane wanted documentation, we would give her structure. She arrived 10 minutes early. Of course she did. When Evan and I walked in, she was already seated, spine straight, handbag placed precisely on the table, a leather folder in front of her. Prepared. She stood when Evan entered, not for me, for him. Evan, she said softly, reaching for his arm, you look tired. I am, he replied evenly. Let's sit. No hug, no kiss on the cheek. A micro shift. She noticed. We all did. The first 5 minutes were deceptively calm. Diane smoothed her blazer sleeves. I think things have spiraled unnecessarily, she began. I was trying to protect this family. By scheduling an induction consultation without my consent? I asked quietly. Her jaw tightened. I was concerned about timing. It's my body, I said evenly, not a calendar event. She ignored that. As for the financial situation, she opened her folder, I simply wanted transparency. You withdrew $9,600 without telling Camille, Evan said. I told you. That's not the same thing. Her eyes flicked toward me. There shouldn't be yours and mine in marriage. There shouldn't be secret withdrawals either, I replied. Silence. The air in the room felt thin. Then she shifted tactics. I think we all know this tension began long before the shower. There it was, the deeper attack. You never liked me, I said calmly. I never understood you, she corrected. That's different. Is it? She asked. Yes, dislike is preference, control is behavior. Evan inhaled slowly. Mom, why did you send the accountant email? To demonstrate imbalance. We didn't ask for that analysis. You needed it. Her voice sharpened. Marriage requires equality. I'm 8 months pregnant, I said quietly. My freelance workload decreased because I am growing your grandchild. You chose freelance, she replied instantly. And you chose to interfere, I said just as fast. Her mask slipped. For a split second, anger flashed. You are too sensitive. Everything feels like an attack to you. I leaned forward slightly. You read 38 criticisms about me at my baby shower. She opened her mouth, closed it. Evan's voice cut in. Mom, did you intend to embarrass Camille? No. Did you expect applause?
I expected accountability. The word hung in the air. Accountability. For what? Existing imperfectly? Then something unexpected happened. Marissa knocked softly and stepped inside. She had asked to be present as a witness. Diane's eyes widened. You brought her? She asked to come, Evan said. Marissa sat down quietly. Mom, this isn't about finances. Diane stiffened. You don't understand adult relationships. I understand patterns, Marissa replied. The room shifted again. Evan looked at his sister. Marissa continued, steady but emotional. You do this when you feel replaced. Diane's face hardened. That is absurd. You did it when Dad left. You did it when I moved out, and now you're doing it with Camille. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Truth has weight. Diane stood abruptly. I will not be psychoanalyzed. But something had cracked, because this wasn't about spreadsheets, or induction appointments, or chandeliers. This was about control disguised as protection. And then my vision blurred. At first, I thought it was stress. The room tilted slightly. A dull pressure tightened behind my eyes. I shifted in my chair. Cam? Evan's voice sounded distant. I blinked. The lights felt too bright. A ringing filled my ears. Then warmth spread down my legs. Not subtle, not gradual. Sudden. Oh, God, Marissa whispered. Evan was already beside me. Camille? My head, I murmured. Something's wrong. Diane froze. For once, truly frozen. A dark patch began spreading across my dress. Water. My water had broken. But the headache, it wasn't normal. Evan's voice sharpened. We need an ambulance. Everything became sound and motion. Marissa dialing. Evan kneeling before me. Diane standing against the glass wall, pale. I remember looking at her, just once, and seeing something that looked like shock. Not anger, not superiority. Shock. As paramedics arrived, the headache intensified. My blood pressure was taken quickly. The medic's expression changed. Possible preeclampsia. We need to move. Evan squeezed my hand as they loaded me onto the stretcher. Stay with me, he said. I'm here, I whispered. But fear had entered the room now. Real fear. Not reputational, not emotional. Medical. In the ambulance, sirens blaring, the medic explained calmly. Stress can contribute. Blood pressure spikes. We'll monitor closely. Stress. The word felt almost cruel. I stared at the ceiling of the ambulance. White, sterile, unforgiving. I thought about the nursery, about the crib, about the envelope, about 38 reasons, and I felt something solidify inside me. This ends. One way or another, this ends. At the hospital, everything blurred into fluorescent lights and urgent voices. INVI inserted, monitors attached, doctors moving quickly. Evan never left my side. Blood pressure is high, a nurse said. We're prepping for delivery, another voice added. Delivery. It wasn't supposed to be today, but it was happening. And outside the room, down the corridor, Diane sat in a plastic hospital chair, alone, for the first time since I'd known her. Alone. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I caught one last glimpse of her. Our eyes met, and in hers, I didn't see calculation. I saw realization, because consequences had finally arrived in a language she understood. Not humiliation, not arguments, not revoked access, but risk, real undeniable risk. And if anything happened to me, she would never forgive herself.
Hospitals have a particular kind of silence. Not true silence. Machines hum, carts roll, distant announcements echo overhead, but an emotional silence, The kind where everything feels suspended between outcomes. That's where I was. Suspended. Bright surgical lights above me, cold air against my skin, a curtain drawn just below my chest as doctors moved quickly beyond it. "Camille, stay with us," a nurse said gently. "I'm here," I whispered. Evan stood at my head, gripping my hand so tightly I could feel his pulse racing through his fingers. "They're going to move quickly," the doctor said. "Your blood pressure is climbing. We don't want to wait." I nodded. There wasn't space for fear now, only focus. A sharp pressure, tugging, motion, and then a sound. Thin at first, then strong. A cry. Our daughter. Evan's breath broke in his chest. "She's here," he choked. Tears slid sideways into my hair as they lifted her briefly above the curtain. Tiny, red, furious at the world. Alive. Relief hit me so hard it felt like gravity doubling. "She's perfect," I whispered. They moved her to the warming table for assessment. I watched from a distance, vision still slightly blurred. "Vitals stable," someone said, but my own numbers weren't. "Pressure still elevated," another nurse murmured. Medication was adjusted, monitors beeped steadily. I focused on the cry across the room, on that sound, that proof. We were okay. For now. Recovery was slower than expected. They kept me overnight in high monitoring. Evan never left. At 3:12 a.m., when the room was dim and quiet, he leaned close. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" "For not seeing it sooner, for letting it get this far." I shook my head weakly. "This isn't all yours." "But I minimized it," he said. "I kept saying it's easier." "Yes," I agreed softly. The truth didn't need volume. He pressed his forehead to my hand. "I won't do that again." I believed him, because something had shifted in him too. Not rebellion, clarity. Diane wasn't allowed into the room that first night. Hospital policy. Password protection. Only Evan. Only me. At 9 a.m. the next morning, there was a quiet knock. Evan looked at me before answering. "Are you ready?" he asked. I considered it. Exhaustion, IV still in my arm, our daughter asleep in the bassinet beside me. "Yes," I said finally. Diane stepped in slowly. No blazer, no folder, no polished composure. She looked smaller. She approached the bassinet first. Her breath caught when she saw the baby. "Oh," she whispered. For a moment, she was just a grandmother, not a strategist, not a critic, just a woman looking at something fragile and new. "She's beautiful," Diane said quietly. Evan didn't respond. I watched her carefully. She turned toward me. I didn't know. About what? That it had gotten this serious. "It didn't get serious yesterday," I replied. She swallowed. "I never intended harm. Intent and impact are not the same thing. You scheduled an induction appointment without telling me," I said calmly. "I thought structure would reduce stress. You created it." Silence. The machines filled it. Diane looked at Evan. "You blocked me." "Yes." "You revoked my access." "Yes." Her voice trembled slightly. "You've cut me out." "No," I said softly. "We created boundaries." The word seemed foreign to her. Boundaries. She pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. For once, she didn't defend herself immediately. Instead, she said something unexpected. "I don't know how to not be needed." The room stilled. That was the first honest sentence she's spoken. Evan's jaw tightened. "You don't need to control to be needed." She looked at him, truly looked at him. "I was 27 when your father left. No safety net, no support. Control was survival. It wasn't an excuse, but it was context. Marissa had been right. Patterns. You taught me strength, Evan, but you also taught me fear." That landed. Diane's eyes filled, not dramatic tears, quiet ones. "I didn't want you dependent on someone unstable."
I am not unstable, I said evenly. She nodded slowly. I see that now. Do you? I wasn't sure. 2 days later, we were discharged. As we prepared to leave, Diane approached one last time. I'd like to help, she said carefully. Help how? Evan asked. Meals, errands, anything. I looked at Evan. He looked at me. This wasn't about punishment. It was about precedent. You can visit, I said slowly, scheduled with notice. Her lips pressed together briefly. Then she nodded. Okay. And no financial involvement, no accounts, no loans, no adjustments. Another nod. Clear terms, clear expectations. It felt almost adult. But trust doesn't reset overnight. It rebuilds in inches. That night at home, I sat in the nursery with our daughter asleep against my chest. The house was quiet, peaceful, but not naive. I thought about the envelope, about 38 reasons, about public humiliation, about ambulance sirens, and I realized something. She had tried to reduce me to bullet points, to deficits, to percentages, but none of that had mattered in the operating room. None of that had held my hand. None of that had steadied my breathing. Control had failed her. Connection had not. Evan came in and sat beside me. She texted, he said. What did she say? He handed me his phone. 3 words. I'm starting therapy. I stared at the message. Do you believe her? I asked. I don't know, he answered honestly. Neither did I. Because growth isn't proven in promises, it's proven in patterns, and we had just broken a very old one. But breaking something doesn't guarantee it won't try to rebuild itself. As I looked down at our daughter's tiny fingers wrapped around mine, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, we would not raise her inside someone else's control.
3 months after the birth, the house no longer smelled like antiseptic and hospital soap. It smells like warmed milk, laundry detergent, vanilla candles I lit during late-night feeds. Life had settled into something fragile but functional. Sleep came in fragments. Time moved strangely. But peace, real peace, had begun stitching itself into the quiet corners of our home. And Diane had, surprisingly, kept her word. Scheduled visits only, no financial commentary, no suggestions disguised as guidance, no surprise drop-ins. For the first few weeks, she was careful, almost restrained. She would text, "Would Sunday at 2 work for a visit?" Never earlier, never unannounced. The first visit was stiff. She brought a small knitted blanket, neutral color. No commentary about nursery design, no critiques about feeding schedules. She held the baby gently, almost reverently. I watched her closely, not looking for flaws, looking for patterns. Patterns tell the truth. 2 weeks later, Evan received a forwarded email. Subject, therapy confirmation. It was a receipt. Diane had begun weekly sessions. Attached was a brief message. I'm not doing this to get access back. I'm doing this because I realized I don't know how to stop controlling outcomes. I read it twice, then handed the phone back. She's saying the right things, I said. Yeah, but saying isn't the same as sustaining. Exactly. By month 4, visits felt more natural. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the living room blinds, Diane sat on the floor beside me while the baby practiced tummy time. She looks like you, Diane said softly. I waited. There was no but, no correction, just observation. That was new. She's stubborn, I replied lightly. Diane almost smiled. She'll need that. I studied her. You're quieter, I said. I'm trying to listen more, she admitted. The honesty startled me. Therapy? I asked. She nodded. My therapist asked me something uncomfortable. What? She asked what I'm afraid of. And I told her I'm afraid of becoming irrelevant.
The word hung between us. Irrelevant. Not powerful, not in control, just unnecessary. "I don't want you irrelevant," Evan said from the doorway. He'd been listening. "I want you supportive." Diane swallowed. "I'm learning that those are not the same thing. No defensiveness, no sarcasm, just reflection." That was progress. But growth isn't linear. It's tested. And the test came quietly. It was a Tuesday evening when I opened our mail and found an envelope from a financial advisory firm. Inside was a brochure, highlighted in yellow, sticky note attached. "For baby's college fund. I know someone there. D." I stared at it. No account had been opened, no money transferred, just a suggestion. On the surface, harmless, but something about the phrasing bothered me. I know someone there. Connection, access, influence. I waited until Evan came home. "She sent this," I said calmly. He read it, paused. "Is this crossing a line?" "It's towing it," I replied. We sat with it. This was the difference now. Before, he would have said, "She's just helping." Now he said, "How do you feel about it?" "I feel like she's testing how much involvement she can regain." He nodded slowly. "Okay." He picked up his phone. Not angry, not aggressive, measured. "Mom, we appreciate the thought. We'll handle college planning ourselves. Please check with us before reaching out to advisors." He showed me before sending. Clear, direct, respectful. He hit send. We waited. 10 minutes later, her reply came. "Understood. I'll step back." No argument, no justification, just acknowledgement. I felt something unclench in my chest. This was new. But the real test came a month later. Family dinner at Marissa's house. First large gathering since the shower incident. 20 people, laughter, clinking glasses, and tension beneath the surface. I felt it the moment we walked in. Eyes lingered a second too long. Conversations paused briefly. The narrative war from months ago had not fully disappeared. It had simply quieted. Midway through dinner, Diane's longtime friend leaned across the table. "So glad everything worked out after that dramatic shower. Emotions run high during pregnancy." It was subtle, dismissive, reframing. I felt the old heat rise in my chest. Before I could respond, Diane spoke. "It wasn't pregnancy," she said calmly. "It was me." The table went still. Her friend blinked. "I crossed boundaries," Diane continued, "and I paid for that." There was no self-pity, no deflection, just ownership. Evan squeezed my knee under the table. The moment passed, but something important had shifted. Public accountability, not just private apology. That mattered. Later that night, as we packed up to leave, Diane approached me quietly. "I'm not expecting trust," she said. "I know that's earned." I studied her face. For months, I had looked for cracks in her composure. Now I was looking for sincerity. "I don't need perfection. I need consistency." She nodded. "I can work on that." Work. Not promise, not guarantee. Work. That was realistic. On the drive home, the baby asleep in the back seat, Evan exhaled slowly. "She defended you." "She did." "How do you feel?" I thought about the envelope, the ambulance, the hospital lights, the therapy receipt, the college brochure, the dinner table moment. "I feel cautious," I said honestly, "but hopeful." Hope is fragile, but it's not foolish when it's paired with boundaries. And for the first time since that baby shower, I didn't feel like I was bracing for impact. I felt prepared. Because if she slipped back into control, we knew what to do. We had done it before, and we would do it again. But maybe, just maybe, she was finally learning that love without control doesn't equal loss. It equals respect.
1 year later, I found the envelope again. Not Diane's. Mine. It was tucked inside a memory box in the nursery closet. Hospital bracelet, newborn cap, first ultrasound printout. And beneath those things, folded carefully, were the photocopied pages of her original 38 reasons. I hadn't looked at them in months. I sat on the floor, back against the crib, and unfolded the papers slowly. The words felt smaller now. Petty. Desperate. They no longer felt like weapons. They felt like evidence of who we used to be. Downstairs, I could hear laughter. Our daughter, Lily, was turning 1 today. There were balloons tied to the banister, a homemade vanilla cake cooling in the kitchen, soft music playing. And Diane was downstairs, helping hang streamers. Not directing, helping. That difference mattered. The past year had been steady. Therapy continued. Weekly, then bi-weekly. There were awkward conversations. Moments where Diane caught herself mid-sentence and recalibrated. "I was about to tell you what I think you should do," she admitted once, laughing nervously. "But I'm trying something new." "What's that?" I asked. Asking instead. It wasn't dramatic transformation. It was gradual, measured, real. She never regained financial access. She never asked. She never attempted to override medical decisions again. Trust rebuilt slowly, not because she demanded it, but because she respected the boundaries that created it. And that was the key. Respect. But growth gets tested when emotion enters the room, and birthdays carry emotion, especially first birthdays. As guests filled the living room, I felt that familiar undercurrent. Not dread, awareness. Patterns don't disappear. They wait for opportunity. Diane arrived carrying a large wrapped box. Too large. Evan noticed it too. "What's that?" he asked lightly. "A surprise," she said with a small smile. The word made my spine stiffen. Surprise. We had agreed on no large gifts without discussion, not because of money, because of symbolism. Control often arrives disguised as generosity. I met her eyes. She seemed to read the tension immediately. "It's nothing disruptive," she said gently. "I promise." I nodded, but I made a mental note. Watch. Observe. Don't react. The party was warm and chaotic. Lily smashed frosting into her hair. Marissa took photos. Friends laughed. And for 2 hours, nothing fractured. Then it was time for gifts. We sat on the rug, Lily in my lap, Evan beside me. Diane placed the large box in front of us. My pulse quickened. Evan opened the card first. He read it silently, then handed it to me. It said, "For Lily's future. No strings, no accounts, no access, just love." Inside was not a toy, not furniture, not something that altered our home. It was a framed letter, handwritten, addressed to Lily. Diane had written about mistakes, about control, about fear disguised as protection, about how she nearly lost her son and granddaughter because she couldn't separate love from authority. At the bottom, she wrote, "Your parents taught me something I should have learned years ago. Being included is a privilege, not a right." There was no check attached, no savings bond, no hidden financial instrument, just the letter. I felt something unexpected rise in my chest. Not forgiveness, not exactly. Relief. Because this gift wasn't leverage. It was accountability. Public. Visible. Irrevocable. Diane looked at me carefully. "I wanted it in writing," she said quietly, "so I can't rewrite it later." That was the most self-aware thing she had ever said. But the final boundary wasn't tested by the gift. It was tested an hour later. As guests began leaving, one of Diane's old friends approached me privately.
You handled everything so gracefully last year. Diane was devastated. She thought she was losing her family. I smiled politely. She had consequences, not punishment. The woman hesitated. You know she was just trying to protect Evan financially. There it was, the old narrative, reframed, softened. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, but this time I didn't swallow it. I didn't minimize it. I didn't look to Evan to intervene. I answered directly. Protection doesn't require humiliation, and love doesn't require control. The woman blinked, then nodded slowly. Across the room, Diane had heard. Our eyes met, and she did something subtle. She didn't defend herself. She didn't jump in. She didn't re-explain her intentions. She simply held my gaze and nodded. Agreement, not correction. That was the test, and she passed it. Later that night, after everyone left, the house finally quiet, Evan wrapped my arms around me in the kitchen. "You were strong today," he said. I wasn't strong. I was clear. Clarity feels different from strength. Strength fights. Clarity stands. Upstairs, Lily slept peacefully, and I thought about the envelope again. The original one. 38 reasons I wasn't enough. It had nearly defined the direction of our family, but it didn't, because we answered it, not with louder humiliation, not with revenge, but with boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. You can come in, but not however you want, and not without respect. Before bed, I walked into the nursery. The framed letter from Diane sat on the dresser. I read the final line one more time. "Thank you for teaching me how to love without possession." I don't know what the future holds. People relapse into old habits. Fear resurfaces. Control tempts. But here's what I do know. If it happens again, I won't hesitate. Not for harmony, not for appearances, not for tradition. Because motherhood did something to me. It erased my tolerance for emotional manipulation and replaced it with something sharper, steadier, unapologetic. So if you're watching this and you're living inside someone else's control, financial, emotional, relational, hear me clearly. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity, and clarity saves families, even when it hurts first. Especially when it hurts first.
If you resonated with this story and would like to hear more, please like and subscribe our channel.